Hi again, everybody. I'd like to read for you a story from Folk Saints, the book Folk Saints of the Borderlands, on Don Pedrito. Now, this really hits home for me because his shrine is, I don't know, no more than an hour and a half drive from my house. And I didn't know about him really until maybe 5-6 years ago. And seeing as how his grave is right by where I'm located, I'm surprised I didn't hear about him before then. But this is him. And he was a healer. He had countless people go to him for healing, and even tested a couple of people in the process. Now, I will tell you a story that I know off the top of my head that has changed over time, and depending on who you talk to, it'll be slightly different. But the one that I know off the top of my head was that he had already been doing this for a while. He had already found out his calling, and it wasn't until he was a little bit older that this calling came to him, which gives us hope for those that are already older. And anyway, so there was this girl who, from my understanding, she was brought up with a silver spoon in her mouth. This is the version I heard. She was brought up with a silver spoon in her mouth, and I believe she had a problem with her skin on her face. It was either acne or it was scars or something, but she had like crater type things on her face. Now, I'm not saying that to sound offensive, it's just what I heard. So she hears about his cures. Now, guys, this was a real person, so she hears about his cures, and she goes to him to try to clear up this face situation. So he takes a look at her and he says, okay, so this is what you're going to do. You are going to go home today. You are going to use pig manure and mud from around this area, either from around her house or from outside his house. I'm not quite sure. But you're supposed to put it all over your face, go to sleep, wake up the next morning, you will be completely cured. Your face will be clear, you'll be looking A-okay. So in her snobbishness, she only puts it on one side of her face. And in doing so, she's like kind of still a little doubtful, So she wakes up, washes it off. Oh my God, her face is completely clear on that side. So she's like, oh crap, okay, I'm gonna do the other side. So she does the other side, wakes up, still the same. Why is there still this stuff on her face? Like, why does she still have the same problem on this side of her face but not on this side? She followed all his instructions. She knew something was up, right? Like, now I'm just throwing stuff in here, but the type. So she goes to him like, oh, it didn't work, this side didn't work. And he's like, because you didn't follow my directions. I told you to put it all over your face. You only put it on one side of your face. Like, you obviously didn't listen to me. You lost faith in me. You doubted me. And he's basically like, that's what happens because you didn't listen. So, that was kind of like the moral of the story, but at the same time kind of like a funny story, because after that she goes back and then she wakes up the next day and both sides of her face now have craters. Again, like back how they were. So that's the story I heard, and it'll vary from person to person. Some people say it was mud. Some people say she wasn't rich. Some people say that's not what he said, blah, 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 blah. But it's a good, story to have faith in what you're doing and to trust in the process, like how the kids say, and to trust your local curandero. So let's get to what this book says about Don Pedrito. So it says here in the beginning, it is known that there is a story about which I'm writing very little of the man who reached heaven, whose name is Grandpa Pedrito. From Tata Pedrito, Rasgos Biográficos Versificados by Liborio Rodriguez. So I guess that was a excerpt taken from a book. His real name was Pedro Jaramillo. The Don which almost always precedes his Christian name. Don means gift. Okay, and under normal circumstances, don means gift. When you have a don, you have a gift. Okay. It is a title of respect, while the diminutive, I can't say that word, Pedrito, almost invariably used for this remarkable man, indicates affection. He was born into poverty near Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico, in around the year 1929. He made his living as a laborer. According to one version of his legend, one day Pedrito was hit on the nose by a branch riding through the brush. So he was on his horse and he got hit in the face. The injury became very painful, and one night when he would not sleep, he went out by a nearby wallow and plastered mud on his nose. This relieved the pain and allowed him to sleep. While he slept, God appeared to him and told him to dedicate his life to healing the sick and injured. He carried the scar on his nose to his grave. Many people said when they see him in person, his nose did look a little funky. The biographical poem I just quoted tells a slightly different version. It has Pedrito suffering an unnamed accident and lying on the ground for 3 days, wounded in the head and surrounded by poisonous snakes. The men who found him were sure he was either dead or dying, when suddenly a horse appeared, killed the snakes, and saved Don Pedrito's life. This could only have been an act of the divine providence. Another legend relates that when his mother became very ill, Don Pedrito prayed for her recovery, saying that if she died, he would leave Mexico forever. When she died, he kept his promise and crossed the borders into Texas, settling in Los Olmos, or the Elms, ranch near present-day Falfurrias. Falfurrias, that's where my family's from. This was in 1881. It is said that he knew this region from an earlier trip when he had a friend that had bought liquor from Mexico to a local rancher for his annual Dia de San Juan celebration. Upon his arrival at Los Olmos, Don Pedrito immediately established himself as a curandero. Meaning, curandero means to cure, a person who cures, a healer. He refused to charge for his cures, but would accept money if it were offered. This money he mostly spent on food and supplies. Here's another picture of him. He was spent on food and supplies for the people who began to flock to him for help. During the terrible drought of the early 1890s, he is said to have fed hundreds of poor folks and had to hire a cook and another helper to assist him. All the money for this came from free will donations. Money of the necessary food he grew himself on a 100-acre plot of land given to him by a neighbor. As many as 500 people at a time were said to have camped at Los Olmos Creek, waiting for a chance to see Don Pedrito. This guy was popular. Whole families would accompany a sick relative, and all of these people had to be fed. Supplies he could not grow himself were hauled by wagon from the nearby town of Alice. Falfurrias was not established until the arrival of the railroad in 1903, 4 years before Don Pedrito's death. At one time, he ordered a whole barrel of cube sugar, a substance that featured in some of his prescriptions. As many as 200 letters a week requesting help and advice began pouring in, and the Paisano post office was established at Los Olmos. Wow, can you imagine? By the time of his death in 1907, Don Pedrito Jaramillo was easily the best known and most loved individual of all South Texas. This is true. It says here, the cures. Always, always when he cured, he invoked the Redeemer. And he who suffered had faith that he would not suffer pain anymore. He never charged money, nor asked for gifts to be returned. He was very sincere in everything and cured the sickest person. Let me say that his shrine is still there, and somebody recently, or a group of people recently, destroyed it. But the joke's on them, because they rebuilt it good as new and even better than it was. They added more. You could just tell that it was one of those situations where The love was there, but it was kind of silent. And then when somebody went and destroyed it, all the people came together and showed their compassion and their caring and their thanks for the Don Pedrito shrine, and made it even more beautiful than it originally was. So I've been there on quite a few occasions now, and I'll make sure to add like pictures here in the video. And I also want to say that a very informed and reputable person in the Santa Muerte community has a very close connection to Don Pedrito, as that was the area that he grew up in, and that is Alexis Arredondo. And we have pictures together at the Don Pedrito shrine, and it was a good time. And he was just as distraught when he found out that the people had destroyed that shrine. That's his homeboy. Don Pedrito's his homeboy, and his family had encounters with Don Pedrito. So, and they attested to how good he was at his job. So, here we go. First, he claimed no special powers for himself, but continuously stated that God used him to allow individuals to cure themselves through their own faith. Secondly, he asked for no payments. And thirdly, he was to a great degree successful. In her 1951 article on Don Pedrito, Ruth Dodson gives a number of accounts of cures that she collected from oral tradition in South Texas. It seems that the curandero would often prescribe some common action or substance and allow the patient's faith in God to chant for a chance to work. I offer a sampling of the cures as told to Dodson. A man suffering from sunstroke was on his way to Los Olmos from Yorktown, some 100 miles away. When he got to Alice, which was 30 miles from Los Olmos, he found Don Pedrito there, performing cures. After hearing of his problem, Don Pedrito told him to go off by himself and bathe for 9 consecutive days. The man persuaded Don Pedro to accept $25 as a gift and started for home. On the way, he camped for 9 days near a water tank, bathing himself daily. He arrived home in excellent health and remained grateful into his old age many years later. A young girl had a swelling on her neck, and her family took her by wagon from Corpus Christi, a journey of some 60 miles, to see Don Pedrito. While they were awaiting their turn at Los Olmos, Don Pedrito ministered to a woman who had seizures believed to be a result of witchcraft. Don Pedrito was unable to cure this woman, who failed to respond to his treatment during a seizure. The family subsequently learned that she later fell into a fire and died as a result of the burns. But he told the parents of the little girl to buy a bottle of inexpensive olive oil and rub the soles of her feet with it, toe to heel, using a chicken feather. This they were to do for 9 consecutive nights, which they did upon their return home, and the child was cured. The postmaster at Baisano, who also taught school at Los Olmos, had a young daughter suffering terribly from a toothache, so much to where she could not sleep at night. Don Pedrito told her to roast a clove of garlic and put it in her shoe on the foot opposite from the side where the toothache was, and to keep that shoe on all night. She followed instructions, and the family set her off on the 30-mile trip to see a dentist to get the tooth pulled. After a painful day of travel, the child spread a blanket out on the ground and immediately fell asleep. When she woke in the morning, the pain was gone. They did not go to the dentist, and the tooth came painlessly out in pieces for a few days later, just as Don Pedrito had predicted. The same girl returned from a visit to an aunt in Louisiana in a very nervous condition. Don Pedrito prescribed that she bathe in a tub of water at daybreak for 3 successive mornings, and that her mother make her a sleeveless jacket of new unbleached muslin that she should not take off for 9 days. After this was done, the girl regained her strength. Interestingly enough, when the mother herself asked for a cure, Don Pedrito refused her, saying that she did not have sufficient faith. Various other prescriptions included a poultice of canned tomatoes for a pain in the side, 9 baths for a leg injury, and halves of a roasted lemon tied to the soles of the feet. The mother of a lad with nosebleed was told to put clean clothes on her son and not change them for 9 days. Each night she should put a bucket of water over the boy, thoroughly wetting him, and he should sleep that way. An epileptic was to go into her yard for 9 consecutive nights, lift her eyes to heaven, and say, "In the name of God," drink 1 swallow of water, and throw the rest out. All the remedies resulted in the desired cures. Certain patterns emerge from the accounts of Don Pedrito's cures. He seems to have prescribed whatever came in his mind or was easily at hand. As so, he often repeated, it was not he or his actions that did the curing, but rather God working through the faith of the individual. Many of the treatments were to be repeated 9 times, the number of days in a Catholic novena. 3, that pervasive quantity in European thought, and custom, both sacred and secular, formal and informal, also appears frequently in Don Pedrito's instructions. Don Pedrito also had clairvoyant powers that allowed him to know things without being told. One man doubted the prescribed cure would work. Don Pedrito told him, "I am as sure that this remedy will cure you as I am that you are wearing a pair of borrowed shoes." The shoes were in fact borrowed, and the man believed and was cured. Another man pretended an ailment in order to test Don Pedrito. Don Pedrito advised him to eat a bale of hay and then said, "When one brings a lie, he will take a lie." Some of the stories concerning Don Pedrito's cures are both practical and amusing. A man in Mexico drank hastily from a pond of water and got a grass burr stuck in his throat. He went to several doctors who told him that it could only be removed surgically. He didn't want an operation and was suffering terribly. He had heard of Don Pedrito in Texas, so he went to visit him. The curandero told him to drink all that he could of water with salt in it. When he did so, he became nauseated and vomited up the grass burr, which in that time had sprouted 2 little leaves. Another woman had recurring migraine headaches. When someone went to Don Pedrito on her behalf, the curandero instructed her head be cut off and fed to hogs. When the woman heard this, she became violently angry and her headache ceased. What a jerk. Okay, that's awesome. No. Hold on. Man. I have little doubt that some people do venerate the deceased curandero as a saint, that prayers are addressed to him, that candles are burned in his honor, and that pictures and statues of him adorn some altars, especially in his traditional territory of South Texas. Yes. Oración al Todopoderoso y evocación al Espíritu Puro. Di Pedrito Jaramillo. So here's a prayer card, or a prayer to Don Pedro. So, here's a picture of a sign pointing to his shrine. And it's very small little piece of land, guys. It's probably like the size of my whole living room. Very small. The Don Pedrito Shrine. Don Pedrito's shrine is located at his gravesite near Falfurrias, Texas. Yes, you literally can sit right next to his grave. It's indoors, but you can totally sit there and talk to him. I did. Hold on. Okay, so this part is just basically describing the store that used to be open, that's not open anymore. And these are some of the candles that were in there. They had Pancho Villa, Don Pedrito, Niño Fidencio, and a bunch of other ones, just like local candles. When me and a friend went in there, we thought, it would be proper to say prayers and to not so much like channel him, but just kind of try to see if we could pick up on anything. We're both former ghost hunters, and I know that it was The concept itself, the notion itself is kind of disrespectful, but we weren't doing it in that manner. So, you know, he got his own messages, I guess you could say. And the message that I got was, how come nobody prays for me? Everybody always comes in here asking for a cure, but nobody is concerned with how I'm doing on the other side. So the message I got was to pray for him so that he could move on, so that he could elevate, so that he could be uplifted, so that he could heal, so to speak. I mean, most people figure, hey, he's dead, or he's a ghost, or he's the ghost of a healer. What would he need healing for? Well, he was still a human, you know, and I don't know. I just got the impression of pray for me. And I wanted to go back in there and clean the place, you know, take some herbs and some, you know, smoke in there and smoke it out and clean it up. And, you know, the concept, the notion of going and cleaning a healer's space under normal circumstances was probably like, why would you do that? It's self-cleaning, you know, kind of thing. It's like, no. There's a lot of people that go in there, much like hospitals, that kind of, they drag their sickness in with them, and all of that sick energy can linger in there. And if somebody doesn't go in there and clean it, then it's gonna stay in there. It's not like, you know what I mean? Like, I was like mentally approaching it from a more realistic point of view. And that's when conversation started with Alexis. He's saying, yeah, I used to go in there all the time and clean it. And at first the owners were kind of like, you know, like, what do you want? Why are you doing this? And then after a while, they kind of looked forward to him going in there and cleaning it, because it's a task and a half to clean that space, energetically speaking and physically speaking. So I was like, oh, thank goodness I'm like not the only one that felt that place would occasionally need a cleaning, you know, and to pray for him, you know, like do him a service. So I just wanted to share that because it was an experience that we had. Here's another picture of Don Pedrito. It must be understood that the culture I have been describing, and indeed all of the beliefs and practices I deal with throughout this book, are neither uniform nor static. Mexico is a large and highly religionized country, which can and does embody great cultural variation even within specific regions. Urban practices may well differ from rural practices. Local beliefs and practices may reflect those of some specific local culture. Beliefs can often vary from individual to individual, and people from every part of Mexico have come to or crossed the U.S.-Mexico border and settled down, adding their regional cultures to the mixture already there. Furthermore, all living culture changes with time. Nothing in human life is static, on the border or elsewhere, with individuals or with groups. But these generalizations should at least provide a framework for the initial approaches to an important and complex aspect of traditional Mexican culture. Very well said. Next, we'll do El Niño Fidencio, but in another video. So, what did you think of Don Pedrito? Of course he's my favorite. He's local. Like I said, should have been putting pictures and stuff like that in the video. Those are just my own personal ones. I would love to do... I would just love to hear the testimonies from local people on their experiences with him in his death, you know? I think all you really have to do is just look inside the shrine. I'm sure I can post some links in the description with some videos that show the inside of the shrine. But yeah, the message I got from him was, pray for me. I mean, if you're perfectly able, you're perfectly healthy, pray for me, you know? So, oh, and another thing, oh man, don't put him on your Santa Muerte altar. He does not like it. At least for me, I did it. Ooh, that wasn't a good experience. Nope, that was a bad idea. It was him. It wasn't her. It was him. Like, he was like, why are you putting me here? Like, don't you know me? Like, yeah, I don't want to have nothing to do with this. So, yeah. Thanks for watching. Sorry for the interruptions, and I hope you guys have a good one.